You're watching World Championship Wreckage, professional wrestling history the way the fans remember. Brought to you by Rivet City Radio and the World Championship Wreckage YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Today's episode with special guest host Crowbar in WCW. And did you know Crowbar played a big role in the way professional wrestling is seen today? So I feel it needs to be said. It turns out Crowbar is the true inventor of AEW.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of World Championship Wreckage. This is an episode that has been a long time coming for Will, because this was the first poll that Will won several weeks back and everything. And we wanted to make sure that we waited until we had our special guest to come on to do this episode so we could do it justice. I'm going to throw it over to Will because he's going to introduce our special guest, and then he's going to take it running. So, Will, the floor is yours.
Well, DadHat, first and foremost, thank you again. It's always fun when you and I cross paths, and this is one of my favorite things to do. But bringing one of my favorite people that I've had a chance to meet in wrestling over the last few years on is going to make it even better. Joining us tonight is former WCW Cruiserweight, Hardcore, and Tag Team Champion. It is Crowbar. Crowbar, man, thank you so much for the time tonight and taking some time to talk shop with us and, chat about some wrestling, brother.
My pleasure, man. Thank you guys for having me on. This is cool.
So, first of all, I have to say, I love the art behind you. I love listening to Star Wars and everything. Will actually told me you were down in Disney at the same week that I was down at Disney.
Yes, he was mentioning that to me. Yeah.
It was hot.
We were down there. We all collectively went down. My family, Danny Doring's family, Roadkill was down there, and Bull Dempsey was down there. And then we met up with a couple friends down there. We all did some Star Wars. It was really, really neat.
Yeah.
I'm a big kid, so I love that stuff.
Oh, I'm saying I'm the same way and everything. I don't think I've been down there several times, different times of year. I have never been on a trip though that was that hot. And I know part of it for me was I have a 5-month-old too, so he doesn't like to be put down. So I was literally holding his body heat with me, and I'm like, ooh, never doing July again. But I have to comment on the art because I'm a big Star Wars fan.
Thank you so much. One of my favorites.
I knew that. I feel like a suck up though, because one of our previous conversations on air, you and I, we spent probably a third of the interview talking about Star Wars because it was that was a fun part.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. No, I love Star Wars. That's exactly what I said the night we started talking about it. Before we dive into WCW directly though, I'm going to start with a question that came off of your Twitter today. And it's been on my mind all day, and I knew that I was going to talk to you tonight. So I was like, I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. You said you had 2 bucket list matches left. You had quoted RVD as being one of them. So I wanted to ask, what's your second bucket list match that you haven't had a chance to work yet, just out of curiosity? If RVD's one, who would be number 2?
I was breaking in to the industry around that time where the cruiserweight guys were becoming a big deal. So I grew up watching guys like Jerry Lynn, got to work him. X-Pac, 1-2-3 Kid, got to work him. Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, Kidman, guys like that. I've had the opportunity to work with those guys. Great honor, great privilege. Worked with Sabu many a times, and that was a huge deal for me. The only 2 from that time that I would really like to work with is that I have not. The only 2 left is Rob Van Dam and Chris Jericho.
Those are That's 2 awesome. Very good names to want to work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they're 2 guys that are out there that could still go. I take a lot of pride in what I'm able to do out there still. I work very hard at it. This is a business where it's not it's usually not done to wear your heart on your sleeve, or it's not professional, or it's looked down upon. I love pro wrestling. I've always been a huge fan. I have a great life outside of pro wrestling. I participate. I wrestle because I effing love pro wrestling. I still enjoy it. And I get a real charge out of being able to go with guys that are half my age or more than that. If you talk to any of these local promoters, they always ask, who do you want to work with? put me with some of the younger guys that want to go. And those are the matches I like to have. And Chris Jericho is out there still wrestling at a really high level. Rob Van Dam is still out there wrestling at a really high level. Both those guys, I'm not delusional. They've had a lot more notoriety in pro wrestling than myself. Multiple championships for multiple big companies. But I will proudly say that in 2023, I believe that there is nobody from that time frame that could operate on the level that I do. And I look forward to proving it.
Hey, those are names that hey, take my money and everything. I was shocked. Like, I do a Wednesday live podcast on Twitch, and usually, like, where we're talking, like, we all have AEW on. So seeing RVD even show up last night, we all were like,
it was awesome.
It's 2023, and RVD just walked out and got a major pop. Like, okay, anything can happen. Well, even when you came out
Big
in
pop,
AEW, it, like
the old music, everything.
Like,
it was
it's
great.
like everything. Like, that's one thing I'm loving about pro wrestling today. It's just like, and AEW is doing a great job with it. Like, it's honoring the past, different companies bringing people back in, whether it's be for one shot or it's for, an extended storyline and everything. And I love it. So seeing when you came through, like, it makes me as a wrestling fan excited to see, like, okay, you get today's stars still with people that I remember from when I was a kid. So it makes it fun.
Yep.
When you look at what you're doing in 2023, I've had a chance we crossed paths at Ricky the Dragon's last match.
Yes.
The big thing you're doing now, and I'm going to tie it into what you were doing in the late 90s, early 2000s too. You go hard, but you're safe. When you look at how you're working in 2023, what's so important about your ring awareness and safety and the way you're working now?
When it comes to the matches I'm having now, I know it sounds crazy. I feel like I'm putting out a better in-ring product than I did in my best times in WCW. Psychology-wise, just moves-wise. A lot of the moves that I'm doing right now are a lot of the same moves that I did in WCW. I've actually added some in, and I've omitted a few of the moves that were iffy or less safe. I really took a lot of time and energy to look at what I can do in the ring, and I was very anal retentive about it. I made a list, and I kept the moves that I believe look athletic. I took the moves that I believe look violent, look cool, and that includes all the more extreme moves that I do. You've seen me do the Northern Lights with the chair, the dive on the barricade, the dive in the chair, all kinds of stuff like that. But in the grand scheme of things, when I'm selecting what moves I'm going to do they look athletic? Do they look violent? Do they look cool? And at the end of the day, are they safe? It's pro wrestling. There's always a shot that something's going to happen, even on the simplest moves. But if you could minimize that risk as much as possible, you and your opponent have a much better shot at walking out unscathed outside of a few bumps and bruises. You're always going to get bumps and bruises. That's how pro wrestling is. But broken bones, torn ligaments, those are injuries, things that lay you up. If you can walk out without being injured, that's a huge win, in my opinion.
One of the spots you just brought up is the guardrail spot, the barricade spot. I saw you do it when you're in Matt's match. When you're doing a spot like that and you're able to add such a high impact move, going into the story that you're telling overall with your entire match, how do you know where to incorporate that kind of stuff? Because you guys do it so fluidly, but yet so safely, without pulling the curtain too far back. Like, how do you know, okay, we're going to be able to pull this off safely on the fly though? Because you guys go at 100 miles an hour. How do you know you're going to be able to pull that guardrail spot, that barricade spot off so well, so executed? Because it looks like it destroys you guys every time. But again, you say, like, it's one of those moves you were doing 25 years ago, but you're still doing today just the same.
First of all, I'm a huge fan of using the guardrail when I can on a lot of the independent shows. Sometimes there's no guardrails. I love it when there's guardrails. I think it looks more professional having a ring surrounded by guardrails and then having a piece of guardrail to use, of course. I always love the optic of the guardrail because unlike a table that breaks, like a guardrail might bend, but there's no give there. I think that looks more stiff and more realistic than anything else. And without pulling the curtain back too far, years ago, probably the last big dive I ever did to the floor was in a tag match. It was myself and Mike Awesome versus Reno and Bam Bam Bigelow. I believe it was on Thunder, and I did an Asai moonsault to the floor, and Bam Bam completely missed me, and I hit the floor. And that was in the midst of my hardcore title reign there. I hit the floor and I tore my abdominal muscle pretty bad. And when you tear that, it's hard to pick your leg up. It's hard to move your trunk. And I was in the middle of a hardcore push there with the title. So I just kept my mouth shut and I wrestled in agony for weeks. And it was from that point on where I really stopped. I made the decision that if I'm going to dive to the floor, it's going to be some kind of a maneuver where the guy is in a prone position on a guardrail, on a chair, on the floor. And I will take my own bump and I will take care of myself and I will take care of the other guy. I've been dropped way too many times throughout my career, way too many to mention. And it's at this stage of my life at 49 years old, going to be 50 soon. I just feel it's a more prudent decision to still do the outside the ring spots, the dives, but I prefer to do them when I'm in control and I could totally protect myself and my opponent.
I think it's very interesting to me. Like, I just watched the Cody Rhodes documentary on Peacock yesterday, and there's a spot with an interview with Undertaker, and he talks about like the torn pec during Hell in the Cell, and he's like, it showed how much old school it was of, okay, if you can walk, you're going to the ring. But it's also, we've shifted in the thought process now as we are in this more modern era now, where it's like, yes, but there's limits to that. Everyone's personal health outside of the ring. Like, I think that fans now really understand, like, if there's something going on, we want you as a person to be safe over the entertainment aspect. Which I'm excited to kind of see that shift. Like, yes, I will be sad if I go to a show and someone's not there, but if it's because they need time, I'm totally okay with it. I want the person as a whole to be healthy.
And maybe I'm old school in this belief, but like I said, I do a dive on a guardrail, dive in on the chair, flip, senton, whatever you call it, onto a guardrail, Vader bomb off the guardrail, but it's all spots where I'm landing on my opponent. I've said this time and time again, today's wrestlers are without question the most freakishly athletically gifted individuals on the planet. They do frontward 2.5 corkscrew, amazing stuff with their body. But when I watch wrestling, again, maybe I'm old school. When I dive on somebody on a guardrail, you see us, we hit chest to chest. When I dive on somebody, when they're prone sitting in a chair, I land on them chest to chest. If I Vader bomb off the guardrail, I land on somebody chest to chest. And I believe that shows the fans that there's real impact. You see sweat fly, and I feel, for me, that looks more impressive than a guy jumping off the top rope doing 2.5 corkscrews in a flip and grazing the guy's shoulder and they fall down.
Yeah.
That's just me. And and that's an incredibly athletic thing to do. And I think some of the younger audience prefer that. I prefer seeing that there was real contact made.
Oh yeah, like you mentioned doing a Vader bomb or anything with Vader. Like, as a kid, I was just like, how's the dude breathing? Like, even watch the impact from older stuff now. When I go back and watch it, I'm still like, how is he moving?
Now, as we get ready to tie this back into WCW on the bigger stage, do you think when you made that cognitive decision in the 90s, okay, I'm going to work safer here, I'm going to do these bumps these ways, do you think these things equate to your longevity? The reason why you're still performing at such a high level in 2023 is because you made this, okay, I'm going to do these things and I'm still going to pull the moves in the high spots, but I'm only going to do the ones that I know we can execute safely. Do you think that's a testament to why you're still able to go, today?
That's a part of it. Whenever you could minimize the risk of injuring yourself, that's huge. Probably the biggest part of my ability of doing what I'm doing today is my other career. I'm a full-time physical therapist for 25 years. When I went through physical therapy school and I was on the independents in ECW, WWE light heavyweight, and WCW at the same time when I was still in school. I graduated, and all throughout my career, even when I was full-time with WCW, when I was home from the road, I wasn't just hanging out and going to the gym and doing wrestling. When I was home from the road, I worked at a local hospital that I was on their per diem roster, and I also worked for a company called Health South that was a sports medicine company way back in the day. So wrestling is a wonderful thing, but you always know that time, even if you make it, is finite for a lot of people. For most, we're all, with the exception of very few, going to get that future endeavors notification, and you have to be able to do something when you finish. So when I was full-time with World Championship Wrestling, I continued to work in physical therapy, and after I was released, I went from being full-time pro wrestler, part-time physical therapist, to full-time physical therapist, part-time wrestler. But that knowledge of how to properly treat injuries and nip small injuries in the bud before they become larger injuries, that has really contributed a lot to my career being this long and being able to operate at the level that I do. And that's really the biggest part. Pro wrestlers a lot of times don't like to go to doctors. Sometimes they're stubborn. A lot of times it's an insurance reason. A lot of younger wrestlers are uninsured, unfortunately. And that prevents them from getting help when they might have a minor injury, and it allows that minor injury to progress into a larger injury. And just the whole wrestling lifestyle too. A lot of pro wrestlers retire. If you look back over the years, it's because of their backs. Let their backs go. They can't walk. They got pain going down their legs from the low back, sciatica. They can't stand up straight. And I'm a really big believer that it's not all the in-ring work. It's not all the wrestling. It's the lifestyle. If you want me to pull back the curtain of my physical therapy world here, a lot of people would assume that the majority of the low back patients you see would be construction workers, landscapers, guys that lift heavy weights. And it's not. It's office workers. Extended, prolonged sitting is the worst thing for low back. And so say a wrestler injures his back in the ring or has a minor injury in his low back from something he did in the ring. You're on a plane for how many hours? Then you're driving in the car for how many hours? You get to the building, if it's a TV day, you're getting there at noon, and the show starts at night. You're sitting around all day. You're in a catering. You're out in catering. You go to the locker room. You sit around. Back in the days, the guys sat. They played cards. They played video games. So when you throw that extended time in sitting on top of an already injured back, you can mess it up. And for people that don't know better, that seems like a logical thing to do. My back hurts. I should rest it. I'm going to sit down. Now, that's just one little thing there. But knowing what positions to avoid and what positions to be in has really preserved my back in spite of people saying I have a more, for lack of a better word, extreme athletic style. If that makes sense.
I have a feeling we're going to bring up the extreme side of your career in WCW. I just have this gut feeling that it's going to come up.
I mean, we both love our hardcore stuff. So
of course, and I think hardcore is a wonderful thing. I'm not a fan of quote unquote garbage wrestling. For me, an ideal hardcore match and is one that maybe starts off wrestling and it progressively breaks down and then you spill to the floor. And then this is a big thing for me, big pet peeve. And then you use objects that naturally occur at ringside. Nothing I hate more than a big garbage can full of crap used all with golf clubs and Nintendos and spatulas and all this shit in the garbage. Like back in the day, one of my favorite matches of all time was Ric Flair, Terry Funk, New York Knockout, I Quit match. That was really a hardcore match before the term hardcore was coined. And they fought, they spilled to the floor, they used microphone wires, they pulled up mats to expose the concrete floor, they used a ringside table, they smashed each other in guardrails, one went flying into a chair. These were all naturally occurring objects that are at ringside. And I also like that what I call the Sabu, Van Dam, Jerry Lynn style, where they mix technical wrestling spots with like a chair or a table. It's a melding of both things.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to just
whacking each other with a chair, right?
Yeah.
In your WCW days, you had a chance to feud with maybe, this is odd to say because the territory heart thinks when I say his name, I don't think hardcore wrestling. I think Terry Funk, NWA, 10 Pounds of Gold, because I love territory wrestling.
Absolutely.
You got the feud with Funk, though, in WCW during the hardcore title scene. When you're building a hardcore, even if a program, but just in general, a match, especially with somebody like the Funkster who has such a deep rooted, traditional wrestling background with a capital R wrestling. When you go into a hardcore story like that, you said you start it the same way you do a normal match. Do you call it the same way you do a normal match, but now you just start adding the extra brush strokes of the table spots or the chair spots or the kendo sticks? Do you just, is it like having more colors on your palette to work with?
First off, just getting to work with Terry Funk in a program over the hardcore title and to get to wrestle Terry Funk on Starrcade, which for those who don't follow it that's a
big check.
Version of wrestling. That was WCW's version of WrestleMania. Starrcade. And if you would have told young Chris Ford that he would be one day feuding with Terry Funk, fighting him on Starrcade for a title belt, I would have said no friggin' way. That's crazy. But it was an absolute honor, privilege, and just a surreal, mind-blowing experience that I still can't believe sometimes. I'm very blessed, very grateful for it. Thank you, Terry Funk. You made my wrestling career with that. It was awesome. But it's a different way that you tell the match, and it also varies on your opponent. Like we said, there's all kinds of different hardcore. There's athletic hardcore. There's garbage wrestling. There's everything. And it's not a knock at all. Terry Funk was incredible, but when he was wrestling in WCW, he was really up there still. So he was less mobile, less able to run and hit the ropes and jump and climb and all that. So we did more of a wrestling, chair whacking, using weapons type of a hardcore match, which was great. That's what we needed to do to tell the story. And it was Terry went 100%, but at that time his knees were bad, his back were bad. So calling a match with Terry at that time would be very different than shortly after WCW. For WWWA, I had a series of matches with Sabu, and at that time Sabu was still going hard, and we built the story very slowly. We started off mat wrestling, and then we went to some high spots, and those high spots got progressively crazier until someone spills outside the ring, and here's a chair, and here's a guardrail, and down the line there's a table. there's a certain build, but that build will all be determined by who your opponent is.
Kind of going through the WCW repertoire here. Yeah, when you came into it, you had some stuff in the mid 90s, but it was that 99 to 2000 push. You were paired off with Daffney and David Flair, and you were in the faction. You guys were all mentally insane. You guys had all lost your minds, right? Like coming after everything you had done through the mid 90s to come into this faction with Daffney and Flair and them kind of explaining to you guys get to go out there and kind of do whatever the hell you want to, like you're crazy, right? What was it like going into that storyline?
It was really cool because when you're playing a crazy person, you really can't do anything wrong. You know what I mean? I had about 6 or 7 matches on WCW Saturday Night as Devon Storm, dark hair Devon Storm, more gothy looking and stuff like that. And at that time, I was being groomed to be this next cruiserweight that would eventually go up to the main roster, Nitro and Thunder, a bigger cruiserweight, a more evil, devious cruiserweight that would maybe use the chair once in a while, use the ring steps and bend the rules and that type of thing. And so the story goes, as I've told it before, I had flown into Vail, Colorado for WCW Saturday Night, and the guys had just gotten back from Nitro, and I went down to the hotel bar to grab something to eat. I had my hair down. I had a black leather jacket on, black jeans, whatever. And I walked into the hotel bar, and supposedly Vince Russo saw me and he liked my look a whole lot. And at that time, David Flair was going around stalking women, being a nut, attacking people backstage. Him and Daffney had this whole crazy thing going on. But at that time, David Flair, he was drawing a rating. People were tuning in to see him, but not a very strong in-ring performer. So that poses a problem. You have this guy that's drawing a rating that people are interested in, but he can't wrestle. So somewhere along the line, somebody came up with the idea of, let's put this guy in a tag team. We'll let the tag team, we'll put him in a tag team with a proficient wrestler that could work well and carry the team. And we'll get David out there in the ring just enough to show that he could do some stuff, and we'll let the partner do the majority of the work. And Crowbar was born.
And I loved that faction. Like, I loved that group.
It was fun.
It was fun. It was cool to kind of see, because I mean, David had come in, and he had turned on Rick. There was the NWO thing. So see something that was just, him by himself, and this group that kind of formed. It was like, and it was all new, and I liked seeing in those later years, like as much as I love the NWO and Sting and everything that came before it, like I still love those later years of WCW, because we were seeing the future. We were seeing that what was to come, and like some people that are still going, just like yourself, you're still going. But it was so cool to kind of see at the time. Like for you, you mentioned kind of Saturday Night being almost like that developmental at that point and everything. What are your memories of that first night being on the quote unquote main roster, like on a Nitro, on a Thunder? Is it okay? Just don't throw up, because now all eyes are on me. Like,
okay, so I had gotten home from that last Saturday night I did, which was a great Saturday night in Vail.
Yeah.
I got to wrestle Chris Benoit and Booker T in the same night. It was amazing. Someone else was supposed to work with Booker. They had some kind of a car issue, so I had a match with Chris Benoit that's on YouTube somewhere, and it was a fantastic match. Great time. And then I think 3 or 4 matches later, they said, so-and-so didn't make it. Do you want to work with Booker? I go, yeah, let me go. So we're in Vail, Colorado. We're up. Yes, I do. Please let me work with Booker. And so I had gotten home from there, and I was riding high off of that whole experience. And then they tell me that I have to go to Salisbury, Maryland, and I'm going to be involved with Vampiro and David Flair and the Misfits. And my first thought was Jimmy Hart booked WCW Saturday night. He followed the main show storylines when he had the main players on it, but he also had the up and coming guys that he kind of, booked and made their stories, and he brought them along. So he had mentioned to me for a while that he had been pushing for me to become a tag team as well with Vampiro. He goes, he thought that'd be a really good thing. I'd worked Vampiro on WCW Saturday Night as Devin Storm. And so when I get this call, they say I'm doing something with David Flair and Vampiro and the Misfits. I'm assuming I'm somehow getting involved with Vampiro now. So I get to Salisbury, Maryland. They run the storyline by me. I'm going to be a guy pumping gas at a gas station. The Misfits and Vampiro are in chase with David Flair and Daffney. They're following them all around. David and Daffney come to the gas station. They ask me what to fill it up. I'm working with this other guy. This other guy asked me to check his oil, and I flip out. I go, hey, the sign says gas, not oil change. And I scream at him, and David loves this, that I'm yelling at this guy, and he asks me what my name is. I go, some people call me Crowbar. And that fit because at that time in WCW, he was going around whacking people with
the crowbar.
a crowbar. So we connected on that. And then later on in the show, Vampiro and the Misfits come. They beat up David at the gas station. I have this pipe, and I beat up Vampiro and the Misfits with the pipe, and I run them off. And now me and David Flair are now, I guess, getting along. The following week, there's some kind of lethal lottery tag team tournament where guys are just thrown together. And I pull up to Nitro, and I see Mike Tenay there. And Mike is I've always loved talking with Mike Tenay. We have a very similar appreciation for like the technical wrestling, the lucha, the old school, the interviews. We just talked wrestling for hours and hours and hours during catering and stuff. And he was fantastic. Him, Scott Hudson, Larry Zbyszko always made me sound great on Saturday night. They were so good to me. So I come into the building, and I'm not even sure if it's still a brand, but I was wearing a Champion shirt. It used to be a brand. Yeah. And he goes, hey, how'd you know? Like, I go, what do you mean? Because how'd you know to wear that shirt? I go, what the hell are you talking about? He goes, you and Flair are winning the tag titles tonight. So
well, okay then.
Yes, we are.
I have to contain myself, and it was just absolutely mind blowing, and couldn't believe it. Was my first night there on the main roster. I'm sure a lot of the guys that have been there for a while probably were really pissed about it. But they told me, so I said, how do you want me to behave in ring now? We did the vignette where I'm wearing a gas station attendant suit. What do you want? They go, we want the people to think that you're just as if not crazier than David Flair. And I thought about it. And a lot of the compliments I get from the WCW Crowbar days was the facial expression, the wacky smile, the laugh, and all that. And this is a true story here. When I'm a very lighthearted guy. I enjoy wrestling. I love doing pro wrestling. And I always have to put on this facade of an evil character or this or that. So I had to be a crazy guy. And if you look at the Crowbar laugh, the eyes, the randomly doing wacky stuff, there is not that character is young Chris Ford not being able to believe that he's in World Championship Wrestling and having just the best effing time imaginable. And that character was really a lot of just me saying, holy shit, I'm here and I'm having fun. That character was more me with an amplifier than anything.
So let's carry on with the storyline then, because right around the corner after you and David dropped the tag titles, you got involved with a story with you and Daffney and Chris and Tammy that eventually led to the cruiserweight title scene. So let's start there. Let's start with the build up into the week where it was the mixed tag match, when the brass and the bat came to you guys and kind of pitched the idea of how it was going to go down. Let's build up to the night of the mixed tag match going into the pin and you winning the cruiserweight title, and them kind of shaping the story about what it was going to be like the following week where you and Daffney had to go head to head.
Yes. So, first of all, even outside of the whole cruiserweight thing, I was absolutely thrilled to be on with the main show working with Chris Candido, guy from Jersey. We had worked. We knew each other really, really well. We always loved seeing each other. We just had a great chemistry when we worked together, and it was just fun. Chris was so fun to work with. He really was one of the all-time greats. Just so fucking good. He's just so good. And now we're getting to do this on the main show, and we're able to do what we do well against each other. It was not a long match. It wasn't a short match. It was kind of, but it was longer for TV. We got to do some really neat stuff. And that was one of just those surreal moments when I got to work with somebody that I came up through the independent ranks with, and he was always there. I always idolized Chris Candido. He was out there a few years before me, and he was just an amazing, amazing talent. And we got to go out there and really tear it up. And then I even forget what the finish was for that match.
It was.
You guys remember what it was? The first one.
The way it ended up happening was, no, it was the second one where Daffney pinned you by accident.
Yes.
Okay, now that you say that, I'm thinking of the finish on the second match. The first one had kind of a screwy.
We had a singles, yeah.
You got the pin in the tag match, or you got the pin on the tag match to win with the title for the two of you.
Yes.
But it was like there was some screwy shenanigans with exactly how it ended up going down. That's what led to the singles match between you and Daffney for the undisputed cruiserweight champion, because you were co-champions for that 7 days.
And we were fighting over the belt like two little kids, actually, who the real champion was. Yeah, that was a good time.
So I always before you go on, like for me, watching it then, like I joke now, like I'm a store manager. I work for Hot Topic. So that was like talking about like earlier, like the gimmick with like the goth and everything, and like everything with Daphne and everything. I was just like, it's my peoples. It's like it was so relatable. So like I remember like watching that and just being like, sorry, love you, Chris Candido. Sorry, my peoples. Like I have to. Like it's where I am as a person, and it's to this day they're still, like I joke, my older emo self. I'm like, they're still the emo characters in wrestling, and I love it.
Oh.
So after the win, you guys were fighting over it like brother and sister. You got to have that singles match, and
that's
guys
a delicate way to do it. You really got to make a good decision there on what you're going to do. How is this match going to go down? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. When you were planning it with her and everything that was going to go into it, you couldn't have a traditional, at this point where you were at, like you couldn't have, we'll say, a traditional crowbar match, because, you would destroy Daphne, because the difference is there. You know what I mean? Like you see a lot of it, especially in 10A, when you had Raven working with Mickie James, for instance. Yeah. And then like I see this match and I see a lot of that there. Not that you guys were coddling or handling him. You worked with them the same way you would a man, but you told a story that allowed you to tell, once again, echoing what we've talked about many times now, you were able to do it safely.
Yeah. We ultimately came to the decision that it would be cool is, we're crazy people, we're very immature, crazy people. We're acting very immaturely over the belt, almost like two little kids to a brother and sister fighting over a toy. So we go, let's make this, let's do some competent wrestling, but it can't be where I'm going out there to beat the shit out of you. It would just kill the whole vibe. That's not what we would do. So we ended up having noogies and wedgies and all this stuff that kids would do. And
it worked.
Yeah.
Like, it worked.
And there was one time in there where I actually hit that splash from the outside in, and I hit it, and I'm like, oh no, what I do? I'm so sorry. Mom's gonna yell at me. I'm sorry. You know what I mean? And we came to the decision that was the way it had to be, and then that's the way. If we tried to beat on each other, it would have totally killed our whole vibe, I thought. So that's how we ultimately decided to handle it, and I think it came off okay. I think anything more vicious or more violent than that would just have been wrong for us at that time. It had to go comedy. It just had to.
Mm-hmm.
So the last big question I have on my list, and this was wrapping back around after you get through to the inevitable buyout in WWF with WCW. You came back around to a WWF run after the buyout happened. What was your first impression going into a WWF event, knowing that you had ECW guys that you had worked with in ECW, you had WWF guys you had worked with during some WWF work, and now you had WCW guys, all three promotions under one roof? What was it like the first time you walked into that door and you saw everything you had just done in the 90s? Here you are in 2001 and everybody's here in one building now.
Well, they were all nightly matches. I never had a WWE deal. I was trying to get there. One of the most memorable ones was, actually two, but Madison Square Garden. I worked the Garden. It was wonderful. I worked with El Gran Apollo, and just being able to say you worked the Garden, got a great reaction and had a great match. That was fun. And I also got to work the Prototype, who later would go on to be John Cena in Philadelphia. And that's really amazing. And I would say this on all my interviews. If anybody in the office or out there has footage of that match, I would love to have it for my own personal consumption to show my kids. I would love to have that match. I just don't know where it is. So if anybody out there listening has access to it, please get it to me. And it was really great. But there were so many. You had the already present WWE roster. You had guys from ECW going there. You had guys from WCW going there. And I worked hard. I had some good showings, I thought. I got some great reaction. I'm not this one of these delusional guys. Oh, I got a great pop here. I got a good reaction wherever I went. But there were just only so many spots. And there are a lot of big name players from both companies there. And Crowbar just didn't fit at that time. So I went on from there to TNA for a cup of coffee. And that didn't work out. And I came to the decision that you have all these bodies, all these great talents trying to get into one spot. And when you come up in any kind of industry like pro wrestling or music or entertainment, they say you got to keep banging on that door, bang on that door, banging on that door until somebody lets you in. And I disagree. I was able to analyze what was going on. There was a lot of bodies, and no matter how hard you banged on that door, you weren't going to get in. There were guys out there that were trying to get in and get noticed, so they were out there doing independence Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and just destroying their bodies. And I got that drive, and I was tempted to do that, but instead, at that point in time, I just saw it as a lost cause. I took a few steps backwards. I still loved doing pro wrestling. I still wanted to do it, but I transitioned into getting married and having a family. I opened a business, which took a lot of my time up, establishing my physical therapy business. And I wrestled enough to stay current. And I think that's also one thing that adds to my that's responsible for my ability to wrestle the way I do this day, is that for a while I really backed off. I wrestled enough to stay current, but I wasn't doing it as much as to abuse my body and break it down. So have many, many years in pro wrestling, but for a while, while the first third of my career was 3-4 nights a week, that little period probably between WCW and now was low mileage. So with the body's still good, the body can still go.
I like that.
Yeah, and it was just, I always say to shoot for the stars, always go for what you want, but you also got to realistically read the landscape and look what's out there. And that door just wasn't going to open for me. And I had to find something else to do. And doing that thing, starting a family, starting a business, establishing a business, that now enables me to play around in wrestling under my own terms. It's very, very empowering. I take the dates I want. When a promoter calls, I'll ask, where's it at? Who's my opponent? Because I want to know if it's going to be a pain to get to. I want to know if my opponent's going to be somebody that I could really tear it up and have fun with, and it's somebody that I want to work. So it's really, I enjoy wrestling right now, I think, more than any time in my career. WCW was great, but there's always that pressure. There's absolutely no pressure whatsoever right now. It's so much fun. There's no pressure on it at all. And as a result, I feel like I'm putting out the best in-ring performance of my entire career.
I like it. DadHat, you got anything for us?
I just again want to say thank you for you taking the time to join us.
My pleasure, man.
When Will said, "Hey, Crowbar's gonna come on," I was just like, "That Crowbar? Like WCW champions Crowbar? Like again, it's just still so surreal for me as a kid who just, I don't know.
I appreciate
it on TV, and it's still so cool to me.
I tell everybody at the end of the day, I'm still, in my belief, I'm the biggest wrestling fan on the planet, and I've just been lucky and blessed enough to be able to do it for so long and to keep doing it. I'm just like you guys. I've just been lucky and blessed enough to be able to do it, but I'm still a huge fan of the pro wrestling product. I live, eat, sleep pro wrestling, and it's wonderful.
Yeah. Absolutely. What the big weekend for wrestling? Of course, we got SummerSlam. There's GCW stuff coming up. We have friends that are going to be at both coming up this weekend. I'm like, okay, it's like WrestleMania, Royal Rumble mini season weekend. Here we go. Like, there's stuff to watch for like the next 8 days. It feels like.
Absolutely.
Like, where do I find that time to do that? Where do outside of work and husband and dad and thank
absolutely.
You.
And I say the same thing. I actually was speaking with a couple friends, and it really is the hardest part, the most challenging part about wrestling now. And there's a lot of freedom. There's no pressure on it, but is balancing it with being dad, getting kids to school, getting kids to activities, being a husband, running a business, and I'm really proud of myself, and I know that I'm not being conceited at all, but if I had all day to just train and to work on my wrestling, who knows what level I would be at right now. I often think that if I had nothing else to do, what would I be doing? But I love being a dad. I love my wife. I love my business. But that's really, if I had to say, the most challenging part of doing it right now is balancing it and taking care of all my other worldly responsibilities.
Yeah. Well, even before,
but it's all worth it.
Yeah, before we even started recording, like Will, my wife was poking her head in, like doing a grocery order, and Will was just like, "Tell her hi, tell her thank you for the DadHat time."
Yeah, like I appreciate it. I know how important it is. I've got 2 kids of my own, plus a life, plus everything going on. Like, it's hard sometimes to find time for everything. I mean, just echoing into oblivion everything you guys said, the work-life balance is hard in every career path you're in, no matter what.
Absolutely. Yep.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Crowbar, this is the opportunity we'd like to give you the floor. Plug yourself. Tell everybody like what you have, anything you want to tell everybody. Shows coming up. Put your practice over if you want to. Anything you want to tell everybody about.
Yeah, where they can find you.
Yeah.
I really only do Twitter. I have an Instagram account, but I haven't figured out how to use it yet, and I don't have time to do it. So I'm really only on Twitter at WCW Crowbar. I have 2 shows coming up the end of this month for ISPW out of New Jersey. One will be, I believe, Thursday, August the 24th against Richard Holiday, which I'm looking very, very forward to. That'll be our second meeting. And then August the 26th on the boardwalk, Wildwood, New Jersey at the Convention Center, I am going to lock up with my very, very good friend. Screw that. He's actually family. Danny Morrison, also known as Danny Doring. And whenever we wrestle each other, we just go nuts, and we do a lot of ad-lib stuff that we don't even call on the back. So there's always something that pops up, some exciting stuff, some real funny stuff. And at the end of the night, we usually just go back to the back and say, yeah, that was really, really good. And this was funny, and that was cool. So I haven't worked with him in a while. I can't wait. That should be a lot of fun. So that's what's going on this month.
Excellent, DadHat. Cool. Well, I think it's back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thank you, Crowbar, for coming on. If there's anything, even a topic that you want to talk about WCW-wise, the door is always wide open. Like, I would love to have you back on here if there's something, I want to talk about some old school Harley race. Come on, we'll talk about some old school Harley race. Anything, you're more than welcome to always to come back.
I love watching old school WCW. I love watching old school WWE. Someone asked me on a previous interview, when you watch wrestling, what do you watch? When me, Chris Ford, is doing cardio, where if I'm going to watch wrestling for my own enjoyment, for what I like to watch, the wrestling that I like to watch generally looks like the wrestling that Jim Cornette says is great. That's the type of wrestling that I enjoy watching. I enjoy doing the more modern stuff, but as a fan, and I think psychologically there's just that nostalgic component. You're watching stuff that you watched as a child that resonated with you, and you felt it in your heart, and you have that attachment to it. That being said, I make it a point to watch modern wrestling and to keep up on it. While I love the old stuff, wrestling has evolved. It's more athletic, and you have to either evolve or go extinct. I say evolve with it or go extinct. So I really watch a lot of the new modern wrestling as well. But if I'm just chilling out, want to watch some wrestling without thinking about it too much, and I just want to go back in that time capsule and watch something that I watched as a kid, there's nothing like watching old like Saturday Night or an old Clash of Champions, Champions. And I'm a huge fan of WWE with the old school, the house shows. I love watching those.
Mm-hmm. So my last question is, since you do keep up with modern wrestling as well, who's a young up and coming, somebody that you're just like, you mentioned RVD and Jericho, but young up and coming, maybe just starting to make a splash. Who's somebody you're like, I would like a chance with that person?
Okay. I love being a base. I love basing for the high flyers. I love hardcore-esque type stuff. So there's a guy out there that's a great high flyer that I would love to base for, but he also does a lot of hardcore stuff. I think I would do an earth-shattering, incredible match with Darby Allin.
Yeah.
Love me some Darby.
That would be a fantastic match.
We're both kind of dark characters. I do hardcore safely. He has this new style of hardcore that looks vicious at times.
Oh, it looks so painful.
I think we could tell a good story, and then I also think right now, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I think I've come across that I've developed a new promo style that not many people could touch, and I think it would come across well on the TV, and I think I would be able to make some very dark and insidious promos against Mr. Darby Allin. In all reality, that match would probably never happen, but I can guarantee you that it would be friggin' phenomenal.
Hey, I like it. I like that pairing. I didn't know where you were gonna go. I was thinking, like, as you're saying, I'm like, okay, of course, that makes perfect sense. That would be a great match.
Honestly, he's not there now, but I actually used to love watching Fuego de Sol. I wanted to work that guy. I wanted to work that guy so bad, but if we're talking main roster guys and a guy that I think we could have a fantastic match with, but also have a good backstory, a good dark backstory, and bring out the toys and the tables and all that type of Darby Allin.
That would be a good one. Well, as we wrap up another episode, again, thank you, Crowbar, for joining us. This is awesome. I'm going to be talking about this for the next month and a half, and plugging this like crazy. Will, what's going on with Botch and Chair Shots and Rivet City Radio this week?
We've got lots coming down. I just dropped all 3 of my features for New South Pro Wrestling. I've got the Duke of Hardcore, John Wayne Murdoch, on Monday. I've also got Stunt Marshall, the new MLW heavyweight champion, Alex Kane. August is looking pretty ripe. I've got some cool stuff coming down the pipes for us.
Very, very cool. Well, as always, you can find World Championship Wreckage at WC Wreckage Pod on Twitter or X or whatever it's called now, because update your app, because I didn't even know what it was on my phone when I turned it on the other day. Of course, we're on Instagram. You can find us on TikTok. There's some cool stuff coming tomorrow night. Tonight is Thursday, right? Yes, tonight is Thursday. Working retail. I don't know what day. Working retail. I don't know what day of the week it is any week. But we are recording this Thursday, so hoping to get this thing dropped first thing in the mornings. But Friday evening, tomorrow, August 4th, Will and myself, and hopefully some special guests jumping in. We're going to be doing our very first live on YouTube for World Championship Wreckage as a kind of celebration for hitting our first big milestone for the channel, that 100 subscribers, which now we're even beyond that at this point. We're going to be doing our giveaway for that Ric Flair figure. We are going to be announcing brand new shows, 3 brand new shows that are going to be coming to the channel, which I am very, very excited about. That yes, we're focusing on WCW, but now we're going to start branching off, talking about some other things you might love in the world of professional wrestling. As always, Will, we've got to pick 2 more topics for the poll. Next week, we're covering Raven and the Flock, because that kind of dominated your Dean Malenko. Sorry, buddy.
Everybody, I wanted to talk about Malenko. How could you not go wrong?
I mean, I do Malenko too, and I know we're going to get there in one episode, but I almost messaged you and was like, have you watched the poll after 48 hours? Do we need a mercy rule? Do we need a mercy rule like baseball? So I'm going to let you go first this week.
Oh, put me on the spot like that.
Because I have 2 in mind. If you say a watch along, I have a watch along to compete. If you have an individual, I have an individual to compete.
Okay. We did the Bash 96. Let's do Bash 2000.
Okay. You want to do a watch along Bash 2000? Okay. Well, I'm going to throw out my watch along. I want to do the very first Sold Out.
Ooh, that's a good show.
The one that had the cool stage where they walked down the steps. A quote, as you always want to talk about, the kind of brand split that was
the unofficial but official brand split.
Yeah. They were trying it. Yeah. An NWO pay-per-view where NWO didn't really win a lot in this pay-per-view. So I'm going to throw out Sold Out, the very first one, even with the crazy let's ride to the arena on trash dumpsters in the snow opening. So, all right. So Bash 2000 or Sold Out. That'll be on the poll as soon as this episode hits the air. Again, Crowbar, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys, man. This was a lot of fun.
Very, very, very much.
All right. And we're going to end this week as we end each and every week wise words from the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah, baby, I got one more thing to say. Your gas tank is full. Your dipstick is in. Your windows washed. Y'all come back and see me again.